The voicemail felt like a physical blow. "Linda, we're keeping Christmas to ourselves this year. You're not invited." My own daughter-in-law's voice, cold and final. For a split second, the whole world just stopped. Then something flipped inside me. Not sadness, but a fierce, quiet determination. She thought she was kicking me out. She had no idea she was unleashing me. Listen, this wasn't just about missing a holiday. This was a declaration of war on my whole family, and I knew my response had to be so big it'd change our story forever. My name is Linda. For 60 years, Christmas was my identity. I remember being a little girl, helping my own grandmother roll out pie crusts in her warm, flour-dusted kitchen. She'd tell me stories about Christmases during the war, when a single orange was a precious gift. "Traditions are the bones of a family, Linda," she'd say, her hands guiding mine. "They hold us together when nothing else will." I carried those words with me my entire life. If you believe the magic of family is worth fighting for, then right now, please take a moment to subscribe and tell me in the comments what tradition you would never give up. When I married my Robert, we were poor in money but rich in love. Our first Christmas tree was a scraggly branch we stuck in a bucket of sand. We decorated it with popcorn strings and paper angels we cut out ourselves. We promised each other then that we would build a family filled with that same magic. When our son David was born, it felt like our promise had been fulfilled. His laughter on Christmas morning was my favorite sound in the world. We weren't always successful. Right after David was born, Robert lost his big construction job. For 3 months, we barely scraped by. I remember it was July, but it felt like the deepest winter inside our tiny apartment. Robert came home one night and found me trying to fix the washing machine, the one that kept eating socks. I was crying, not over the machine, but over the fear. He sat on the damp floor beside me and didn't try to fix the machine. He just took my hand. "We're losing the house, aren't we, Linda?" he whispered. I couldn't even look at him. The bank sent another notice. "We don't have enough for the insurance renewal." Instead of panicking, he smiled. It was that slow, steady smile that always calmed my hurricane. "Linda," my grandma used to say, "you only lose what you can't rebuild. We can't rebuild the house, maybe, but we can always rebuild us." The next day, he sold his favorite tool collection tools he had inherited from his father and used the money to pay the overdue insurance. He didn't complain. He just put his arm around me and said, "We're safe, darling. We're together. That's the only tradition that matters." That moment, Robert sacrificing his family legacy to protect us, is why the word tradition became sacred to me. It wasn't about the gingerbread. It was about the strength to sacrifice for love. But after Robert passed away, a shadow fell over our holidays. David tried his best, he really did, but the joy just wasn't there. It felt empty, honestly. Then he met Sarah. At first I was thrilled. She was bright, beautiful, and she made David smile again. I welcomed her with open arms, sharing my recipes, my stories. I thought we were building a new version of our family. I was so blind. The distancing was slow. It was like watching a glacier move, inch by painful inch. Phone calls went unreturned. Visits became shorter. I was losing him. Last Christmas, I saw the look in Sarah's eyes as I handed her my famous gingerbread house. It's not gratitude, it was annoyance. She was tolerating my traditions, not embracing them. I cried for a day. I felt sorry for myself. And then I got angry. Not a hot, screaming anger, but a cold, sharp resolve. Sarah saw me as a sweet old lady to be managed. She had no idea. That woman who ran a successful business for 30 years? The one who used to negotiate with ruthless contractors? She was still in here. She was just waiting for a reason to come out and get the job done. The uninvitation wasn't a shock. It was the final, brutal cut after months of tiny little wounds. But there was one night, just 6 weeks ago, that solidified everything. I'd brought over Robert's vintage cider press, the one he made by hand. I wanted to start the apple cider tradition with my grandson, Ethan. Sarah was serving David a store-bought spiced wine. I said, "Oh, wonderful! Ethan and I can go set up the press outside. We'll have fresh cider ready in an hour, just like Robert always did." The kitchen went silent. Sarah didn't even look at me. She just turned the bottle of spiced wine slowly in her hands, as if it were a fragile artifact. "Linda," she said, so sweetly it felt like ice in my veins, "we appreciate the gesture, truly. But that press? It's so heavy, and honestly, it doesn't meet our safety standards, and the noise. Ethan really doesn't handle loud noises well." Safety standards? That old press was solid oak. It was an antique. It was Robert. I looked at David. I looked at my son, the man whose laughter on Christmas morning used to be my favorite sound. He cleared his throat. Mom, Sarah's right. Maybe next year. We don't want to upset Ethan. That was it. That lie, that pathetic excuse delivered by my own son. That was the moment I realized the war wasn't just Sarah versus Linda. It was Sarah and David versus everything Robert and I had built. My plan started with a single crazy idea. If I wasn't welcome at their small Christmas, I'd host a Christmas for the entire city. Well, for anyone who, like me, didn't have anywhere to go. My first call was to Arthur, my oldest friend who ran the struggling community center. Arthur, I said, my voice steady and strong, I need your main hall on Christmas Day, and I need your help. I'm throwing a party. There was a long pause on the other end. It felt like a lifetime. Linda? And you can either watch this from the sidelines, or you can help me make history. Arthur, God bless him, he didn't even hesitate. What do you need? That was the moment I knew I wasn't alone. Arthur was handling the hall, but I knew the real work wasn't contracts or phone calls. It was finding the people who needed a Christmas more than I did. So I grabbed a stack of flyers, handwritten, messy, just like my grandmother's old recipes, and headed to the grocery store. My hands were trembling slightly. I was nervous. This felt scarier than any meeting with a banker. I watched this young woman standing there. She looked exhausted. Tired eyes, two little kids hanging right onto her legs. They looked like they hadn't slept well in weeks. She was staring at the flyer. "A community Christmas?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Is it really free?" I learned her name was Maria. Her husband had left her 3 months ago. She was working 2 jobs, cleaning offices, and she was terrified of her children waking up to nothing on Christmas morning. As she spoke, her little girl, Chloe, maybe 4 years old, looked up at me with huge, hopeful eyes. "Will Santa know to find me there?" she asked. I didn't answer right away. I actually choked up. When that little girl asked that question, the whole war with Sarah just vanished. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about healing. This was about doing what Robert and I always believed in, making sure the magic was there for those who needed it most. A few hours later, I was still putting up flyers, now outside George's Antiques, a dusty, beautiful shop on the edge of downtown. George and I went to school together. He had the same quiet, steady presence he had back then. I'd always had a little crush on him, but Robert was my life. I walked in. The shop smelled like old paper and lemon polish. "Linda? Haven't seen you in here in years," George said, looking up from polishing a grandfather clock. His hair was silver now, but his smile was the same. "I need your window, George. I'm throwing a party." I handed him a flyer, trying to sound completely professional. He read it slowly, his silver eyebrows lifting as he saw the dates. He looked past the paper right at my eyes. "This is big, Linda. You're fighting, aren't you?" The question hit me hard. He didn't ask who I was fighting or why, he just saw the resolve I was hiding. I leaned against a dusty bookshelf. "I am. I'm fighting for Robert's memory, I guess. And for every person who feels like they don't belong." George folded the flyer neatly. "You know, back when you were running your business, I always admired that quiet fire you had. You never yelled, you just fixed things. You fixed problems and you fixed people. You fixed the world around you." He didn't make a move. He didn't flirt. He just opened a big display case and slid the flyer inside, front and center. "I'll spread the word to all my customers, Linda. If you need anything at all, you call me. You're doing something good." His quiet, steady belief in me, a belief that had nothing to do with my son or Sarah, felt like the purest gift. It gave me the strength to go face the next challenge. That night, I met Arthur at the community center. We sat in the big, cold, empty hall, the light feeling weak and sickly. Arthur had the numbers laid out. He looked worried. "Linda, listen to me," he said, pushing a sheet of paper over the table. "I love the heart behind this. But just for 150 people paper plates, the insurance waiver, heat for the day, and food, we're looking at maybe $30,000. I stared at the number. 30,000. It hit me like a physical punch. I had savings, but not that kind of cash to throw at a one-day event. I knew David and Sarah would pay anything to watch me fail right here, right now, on this stupid piece of paper. Arthur took the paper back and folded it slowly, methodically. His hands were shaking slightly. He didn't look at the paper. He looked out into the vast, cold emptiness of the hall. "It's not just the money, Linda. This hall, it's cursed for me." I waited. I knew this wasn't about the 30,000. This was personal. 10 years ago, he finally said, his voice barely audible, "we tried to do a summer camp here for the neighborhood kids. I was in charge of the fundraising. I messed up the paperwork, missed a deadline for a huge government grant, 150,000. Gone." The camp collapsed. The center barely survived. I broke a lot of promises to those families. I broke a promise to myself. I told myself I wouldn't dare try anything big again, not in this hall. He finally looked at me, his eyes full of decades of regret. When you called, Linda, it felt like a second chance. A terrifying, crazy second chance. I need this to work more than you do. I need to know I haven't been useless all this time. I didn't offer sympathy. I offered resolve. This was the moment I used my business strength to lift up an ally. Arthur, that was 10 years ago. Today, you are running the most successful Christmas party this city has ever seen. We have a $30,000 problem, not a $150,000 disaster. You get me that list of vendors. I know how to ask for money, but you know how to rebuild trust. We solve this together. I took a deep breath. This wasn't a gingerbread house fight anymore. This was a business deal, and I knew how to make a deal. I remembered sitting across from a bank VP 20 years ago, fighting to keep my shop open. He had all the power, just like this $30,000 number did now. I didn't lose that fight then, and I wasn't losing this one. Arthur, I said, my voice dropping low and steady. We're not paying that. We're getting it donated. We need a strategy. You give me the list of every major vendor you use in this city, the bakers, the linen suppliers, the biggest food distributors. I'm not asking for charity. I'm offering them a Christmas story they can't buy. Arthur just blinked. A story? Linda, they want money. They want good publicity, Arthur. We're going to give them the human heart of the community, delivered right before the holidays. They'll look like heroes. My new strategy was working for the party, but Maria was facing a much more immediate personal crisis. A few days before Christmas, Maria came to the center shaking, not from cold, but from fear. Linda, I got a final notice, she whispered. My landlord is raising the rent on the 1st. I can't afford it. We're going to be out right after Christmas. I saw the terror in her eyes. Maria was facing the same fear Robert and I had faced years ago, losing our home. I sat her down at Arthur's desk and pulled out my little black address book, the one full of every vendor, banker, and contractor I had dealt with in 3 decades. I looked at Maria. Listen to me, Maria. We fight this with facts, not feelings. What is your landlord's name, and who manages the property? She told me the property management company. A massive corporation, exactly the kind of people I used to negotiate with. I called the regional manager, Mr. Peterson, demanding an immediate meeting. I didn't introduce myself as Linda the grandmother. I introduced myself as Linda the investor. Mr. Peterson, I said, my voice ice cold, I am calling regarding your tenant, Maria Sanchez. I understand you are moving forward with an unreasonable rent increase despite her perfect payment history right before Christmas. Do you realize that the success of our community Christmas dinner is dependent on her stability? He laughed, a small, arrogant sound. Ma'am, I don't care about a community dinner. We care about market rates. You care about your stock price, Mr. Peterson, I countered, cutting him off. I am personally investing $5,000 to cover the back heating bill for the community center, and I have connections to every major media outlet in this city, all of whom are covering the story of the uninvited grandmother who is saving Christmas. How do you think the headline, Massive Corporation, Evicts Volunteer Single Mother Days Before Christmases, would look next to a photo of your CEO in tomorrow's paper? There was silence, a very long, expensive silence. We can, perhaps, postpone the rent increase, Mrs. Linda, he stammered. No, Mr. Peterson. You will freeze the rent for 6 months, and you will call Maria personally to apologize for the oversight. Do we have a deal, or do I call the Chronicle now? He agreed. That wasn't kindness. That was business, used for good. Watching the relief flood Maria's face was better than any profit margin. This was my victory, and you know what? It worked. Maria didn't just want to come, she wanted to help. She offered to volunteer, to bring what little food she could. She became my first soldier. We started a small team. There was Leo, a quiet, retired chef who had lost his wife the previous year and was dreading the empty silence of his home. Cooking for a crowd, he said, would be a blessing. There was Mrs. Gable, my 90-year-old neighbor, who insisted on knitting 50 scarves as gifts for attendees, her gnarled fingers working tirelessly every night. My phone started buzzing, but not with David's calls, which I was still ignoring. It was with offers of help. A local bakery donated day-old bread. A farmer offered a discount on turkeys. The story of the uninvited grandmother seemed to touch a nerve. People wanted to be part of this rebellion of kindness. Then David showed up, unannounced. I was outside the center, trying to secure a wobbly ladder to hang a banner, when his SUV pulled up. The same luxury SUV Sarah had insisted they buy. David got out. He didn't look mad, he looked miserable, like a hostage. This wasn't his idea. "Mom," he started, his voice a low, hurried plea. "I got a call from Sarah's mother. She heard you're throwing some kind of giant homeless party." I stopped what I was doing, but I didn't look at him right away. I kept my back to him and adjusted the banner. "It's a community Christmas dinner, David, and it's not just for the homeless. It's for anyone who needs a family that day, like me." He stepped closer. "Mom, please, this is making Sarah look terrible. Everyone is asking why you do this instead of coming to our house. It's affecting my new promotion. Sarah says if you just cancel it, we can talk about doing an earlier visit with Ethan next week." I finally turned around. I used my low business voice. No anger, just finality. "You have two options, David. You can stay here and help me finish hanging this banner, or you can leave and tell Sarah that I am running a community event, not a private social club. You can also tell her that if she or her mother or anyone else tries to pressure Arthur into pulling the haul, I will call every reporter I know and tell them exactly why I started this." He just stared at me. He was wearing an expensive coat and his hands were empty. He didn't move toward the ladder. I can't, Mom. I have a client call. I'm sorry." He got back into his car and drove away. That moment, seeing him choose the promotion over the banner, was the second time I lost my son. But then, the first major physical obstacle hit. The community center's heating system failed. It was ancient, and the repair would cost $5,000 we didn't have. Arthur called me, his voice thick with despair. "Linda, I'm so sorry. It's over. We can't host a party in a freezing cold hall." I felt the dream crumbling. For a moment, the old Linda, the one who felt defeated, threatened to return. But I looked at the spreadsheet on my table, at the list of over 100 people who were counting on us. The elderly, the lonely, the struggling families. I couldn't let them down. I made a decision I never thought I would. I had to solve this, and fast. I couldn't wait for Arthur's vendors to respond, and I couldn't waste time negotiating. I needed cash now. I went to the local bank and asked for a loan, using my paid-off car as collateral. My car. It was the last thing Robert and I had bought together. That car felt like a part of him. Risky? Yes, but necessary. The bank manager, a stern man named Mr. Evans, listened to my story. "You're risking your personal asset for a one-day party?" he asked, incredulous. I looked him straight in the eye, keeping my voice absolutely steady, the same voice I used to close big deals. "Mr. Evans, I'm not risking it. I'm investing in my community. Right now, they're the only family I've got. If I lose the car, I lose the memory of Robert. If I lose this party, I lose the magic of Christmas forever. That's the real collateral." To my utter shock, he approved the loan. He even wrote a small personal check as a donation. "My mother was alone last Christmas," he said simply. "This matters." The victory was sweet, but short-lived. A few days later, we were finally decorating the hall. We were stringing lights, draping garlands over the stage. The air smelled like pine and possibility. I was up on a rickety ladder trying to fasten a massive star at the peak of the archway when David finally confronted me again. "Mom, what is going on?" His voice was loud, frantic. "I've been calling for weeks. Sarah said she told you about Christmas, and then you just vanished. You mortgaged your car, Mom, for this?" I climbed down slowly. Every single movement was deliberate. I stood right in front of him, smelling the cold air on his expensive coat. The hurt and confusion in his eyes was real. He was genuinely shocked by the car thing. "She didn't tell me about Christmas, David," I said, my voice low and cutting through the quiet. "She left me a 17-second voicemail uninviting me from my own family's tradition." I watched the shock register on his face. He didn't know. Sarah had told him she'd talked to me and that I understood. The betrayal hit him harder than I thought. The next morning I got a frantic call from Mr. Evans, the bank manager. His voice was cold, professional, the total opposite of his kindness yesterday. "Linda, I have a massive problem. Mrs. Eleanor Hawthorne, Sarah's mother, came in this morning. She's threatening to move her entire portfolio, worth millions, to a competitor unless we cancel your loan immediately." I felt the blood run cold. Eleanor was the one who was truly trying to destroy me, not Sarah. Sarah was scared. Eleanor was ruthless. "Put her on the line, Mr. Evans," I commanded, my voice dropping back into my old negotiating cadence. A high, crisp voice came on the line. "Linda, I understand you've thrown a temper tantrum that's embarrassing my daughter. This stops now. I'll ruin your loan, and I'll make sure every donation Arthur got is pulled. You don't mess with my family's reputation." "Eleanor," I countered, calm as ice. I know precisely what your reputation is worth. You move your millions, and I will call the three biggest news stations in the city and tell them exactly why Sarah and David are secretly volunteering at a homeless dinner instead of attending your private club Christmas. You'll be painted as the Scrooge who tried to pull funding from a charity days before Christmas, and David will lose his promotion faster than you can hang tinsel. You are a nasty woman, Linda, she spat out. I am a protective grandmother, Eleanor. You go back to your holiday party and you leave me to mine, and you tell Sarah that I look forward to seeing her in the kitchen on Christmas Day. I hung up. The victory was exhausting, but the party was safe. For now. She said, "What?" David whispered, his face going pale. His anger, which had been boiling toward me, evaporated and was now redirected fully toward his wife. "Mom, I would never. I didn't know. I swear." He looked around the transforming hall at the small army of volunteers working with joyful purpose. Maria was showing Mrs. Gable the perfect way to tie a bow. Leo, the chef, was arguing good-naturedly with Arthur over where to put the carving station. "What is all this, Mom?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Why go this far? Why risk your car?" He was looking for an excuse for Sarah. A way out. I knew I had to be firm. "This," I said, my voice soft but firm, looking him straight in the eyes, "is my Christmas. And it's not a revenge party, David. It's a rescue party. I was given a closed door, David, so I decided to build a bigger, warmer, more welcoming room right next to it." He still hesitated. "But Sarah," she said, "we needed to focus on our own family. She said your traditions were too much pressure." I stepped closer and touched his arm, forcing him to look at the work of his grandfather's hands, the spirit of Robert. "Stop rationalizing her cruelty, son. Stop making excuses for the woman who tried to erase your father's memory and silence your mother's love. She lied to you. She excluded me, and you let it happen." I saw a new respect dawning in his eyes, mixed with a deep, crushing shame. He didn't apologize. He didn't make excuses. He just stared at the massive 5,000 star hanging above the stage, the symbol of my sacrifice. Then, slowly, David slipped out of his expensive coat, draped it carefully over a folding chair, picked up a heavy box of ornaments, and walked toward the stage to help Leo and Arthur. He was quiet, but he was working. He was back. Christmas Day arrived. The hall was a miracle, warm, brightly lit. The heating system was singing its thanks and filled with the smell of roasting turkey and fresh pine needles. The band was playing, people were laughing, children were dancing. I was in my element, a general of goodwill. The light from the giant star above the stage shone down on hundreds of happy faces. And then I saw her. Sarah. She was standing frozen at the double doors, alone. Her face was pale with shock and confusion. She saw David laughing with Leo the chef as they carved the turkey, his cheeks rosy from the heat of the ovens and the joy of the crowd. She didn't approach me with anger. She walked over, her steps hesitant. Her face was tense, but she was trying to force a smile. "Linda," she said, her voice trembling slightly, trying to sound in control. "This is incredible. You've certainly done a lot of work, a very public statement. You must be pleased." I simply looked at her, waiting. I let the silence hang there, heavy, forcing her to be the one to fill the gap. She couldn't hold it. The words tumbled out of her then, a confession born of sheer awe and regret. She realized the size of the world I had built and the tiny, cold corner she had retreated into. "I know what David said about the voicemail," she stammered. "I know it was wrong, but I was so afraid of not being enough for David. Afraid that I would always live in the shadow of the perfect family you had built with Robert." She looked away, tears finally streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. "I saw your traditions, Linda. The gingerbread, the cider press, I saw them as a judgment on my life, as a standard I could never meet. So, in a moment of panic and insecurity, I tried to remove the standard. I thought if I cut you out, I could finally breathe," she confessed. "I was wrong. All I did was make our world smaller and colder. I am so sorry." In that moment, I didn't see a villain. I saw a scared young woman who had made a terrible mistake out of fear. Fear had made her cruel. I was about to speak, to deliver the final cutting word that would end the battle. But before I could, David came and stood beside her, putting his arm around her. This time, he wasn't choosing her over me, he was choosing them both. "We both messed up, Mom. We got lost in building our own little world and forgot that family isn't a fortress to keep people out. It's a hearth to gather around." The party around us continued, a swirling vortex of joy and connection. My son and his wife were here, not out of obligation, but because they had been drawn into the light of what I had built. Sarah ended up rolling up her sleeves and helping in the kitchen. David became the official gift distributor, handing out Mrs. Gable's scarves and the donated toys to the children. They were absorbed not as hosts, but as humble participants in something beautiful. As the music slowed and the final plates were cleared, I saw David and Sarah sitting on the stage steps looking exhausted but at peace. Maria was gathering her children, Chloe fast asleep in her arms, wrapped in Mrs. Gable's beautiful blue scarf. I walked over to David, and he immediately looked up at me. He didn't have to say anything about the car. I knew he was thinking about the loan. "Mom," he started, his voice thick. "I've already called Mr. Evans. The loan balance. Sarah and I are paying it off first thing tomorrow. The car is yours, Mom. It should never have been risked." I just smiled. "I know, honey, but I needed to risk it. I needed to know I was still me, and I needed to know that you remember what families is supposed to mean." He nodded, a tear running down his cheek. "I do now. I promise. I really do." Sarah gave me a real, true, heartfelt hug. "Next year," she whispered, her voice steady now. "Next year we do this together, all of us, and I want to learn how to make that gingerbread house if you'll teach me." I went into this whole fight seeking to prove a point, to show my strength against Sarah, but I ended up discovering a different kind of strength, the strength to forgive, to understand, and to build bridges instead of walls. I got my family back, but I also gained a much larger one. The lonely, the lost, the broken. They had become my family too. The last guest to leave was Maria. She walked out into the cold air, her sleeping daughter tucked close, holding a small paper plate of leftovers. She turned, caught my eye, and gave me a silent, grateful nod. I watched her walk across the parking lot toward a future where she wouldn't lose her home, a future Linda, the businesswoman, had secured for her. The light from the giant star above the community center shone down, not on a party, but on a family that stretched all across the city. Arthur stood beside me, watching the last car pull out. He didn't say anything, but the peace on his face, after 10 years of shame, was the greatest reward of all. Just as I was about to lock the doors, I saw George. He was standing outside the glass, waiting patiently. He walked over to me, holding a single, small bouquet of white chrysanthemums. "Linda," he said, handing them to me, "I just wanted to see your face. It's the same fire, but softer now." "Thank you, George," I said, inhaling the scent of the flowers. "It was a long day, the most beautiful Christmas I've seen in 30 years, he countered. He glanced toward the street where David's car had left. "You got your family back." "I did. I also found a new one." "That's all that matters," George said simply. "But if you ever need a break from being a general, I'm just polishing clocks down the street." He didn't push. He didn't ask for a date. He just gave me a quiet nod, the promise of friendship and possibility, and walked away, leaving me standing alone with my flowers, the scent of pine, and the magic of my repaired world. So, if you are ever handed a rejection, if you are ever made to feel small or unwanted, remember this story. Don't shrink, don't retaliate, expand, build a bigger table, cook a bigger feast, open your doors wider. Your greatest revenge will be a life so full of joy and purpose that the people who shut you out will have no choice but to knock on your door, asking if they can please come in and share in the light. If this story reminded you that there is always a way to turn pain into power, then do me a favor. Please hit that like button right now and subscribe to our channel Soul, scribed for more stories that help you see the world in a new way. When a door closes, build a bigger room. Your kindness is your sharpest weapon.